The sun was melting into the horizon, spilling liquid gold across the Arabian Gulf, when he first wrote her name in the sand. His fingers traced each letter with the reverence of a poet writing his final verse. Sheikh Hamdan, the prince the world knew as Fazza, wasn't just inscribing a name, he was confessing a truth he had never dared to speak aloud. The desert winds had carried his secrets for years, but now, the sea stood before him, as if listening. Each wave came closer, as though curious about the woman who had made a prince forget his throne and remember his heart. He had written countless poems for her, hidden between metaphors, sealed inside verses only she could decode. The world thought they were just words of a dreamer prince, but every line carried her laughter, every rhyme echoed her eyes. He never mentioned her name publicly, yet anyone who listened closely could feel her presence. She was the reason behind his pauses, the softness behind his strength. Even when duty demanded silence, his heart rebelled through ink and rhythm, whispering her memory into eternity. There was something eternal about that evening, the way the light embraced the water, the way the breeze carried her perfume though she was miles away. It was as if destiny had pressed pause on the universe to let him remember what love truly felt like. He closed his eyes and saw her standing by the shore, her hair dancing with the wind, her smile too radiant to belong to this world. "You belong to the stars," he had once told her, and she had replied, "Then why do you keep looking at me like I'm your sky?" But not all love stories are meant for the public. Some are born in silence and buried in the heart's most guarded chambers. Fazza's love for her was one of those, sacred, hidden, yet so real it could bend time. There were nights when he would ride his horse into the desert just to talk to her memory. Under the moonlight, with the vastness of sand stretching endlessly, he would whisper, "If only love were as free as the wind, I would have followed you without looking back." Yet, royalty has boundaries, and his crown often felt like a cage that gleamed too brightly. He had chosen the sea that evening because it never judged. The waves had always been his silent witnesses. When he was young, he wrote his dreams in the sand, now, he wrote her name. The difference was that this time, the ocean didn't wash it away. It came close, kissed the letters gently, and retreated, as if to promise it would remember. For even nature seemed to know that this was not a fleeting moment but an unending love written beneath the horizon. In the solitude of his royal chambers, he would often replay their moments in his mind, her laughter echoing like a melody, her voice soft enough to tame even his storms. She had never asked for his title, never wanted the world that came with his name. All she had ever wanted was his time, his sincerity, his truth. And he had given it, not through promises but through poetry, through the verses that only she could fully understand. People saw a prince, she saw a man. A man who laughed too little and dreamed too much. A man who carried responsibility on his shoulders but poetry in his veins. With her, he was not Sheikh Hamdan, not the future ruler, not the crown prince. He was just Hamdan, a soul searching for peace in the chaos of royal expectations. She had once told him, "When you write, you sound like freedom," and he had replied, "That's because I only write when I think of you." Their love was not broken by time, only hidden by circumstance. There were moments when duty demanded distance, and the world demanded silence. But love, true love, does not fade when it is unspoken, it grows deeper, quieter, more eternal. Every sunset reminded him of her eyes, every desert breeze carried her whispers. And though the world never saw her face beside him, she was in everything he did, every poem he released, every word he spoke to the stars. Sometimes, in the middle of a crowded royal event, his mind would drift back to that shoreline. He would see her name written in the sand, shining beneath the twilight. No one noticed the faint smile that touched his lips or the sadness that lingered behind it. He had learned to hide love like a secret prayer, one only heaven could hear. For in his heart, she was not gone, she was simply waiting in another lifetime, where love.
That night, the moon hung lower than usual, as if it, too, wanted to listen to his heart. Fazza sat by the shore long after the world had fallen asleep, his robe brushing against the cool sand, his heart whispering to the ocean. Every sound of the tide felt like her voice calling him home, and every star above shimmered with the softness of her memory. He picked up a shell and held it to his ear, smiling faintly when he thought he heard her laughter within it. "You still speak to me," he murmured, "even when silence is all we have left." The waves seemed to nod in reply, carrying his words into the endless horizon. There was a poem he never released, one he kept hidden within his journal, sealed between pages that smelled faintly of the sea. It was her story, their story, written not in the grandeur of royalty but in the simplicity of two souls who had loved beyond logic. He had written it one lonely evening when he realized that some hearts were not meant to forget, they were meant to endure. Each verse was a promise, each line a confession. And though the world would never read it, he knew the ocean already had. In the years that followed, he built kingdoms of dreams and fulfilled duties of destiny, but every triumph felt incomplete without her gaze beside him. The people celebrated his achievements, unaware that behind every smile was an ache too deep to heal. Sometimes, as he rode his horse across the dunes, he would glance toward the distant waters and feel that quiet ache tug at his chest. "You taught me love," he would whisper to the wind, "and the world taught me loss." Yet, even loss felt beautiful when it carried her name. He began to visit that same beach in secret whenever his heart grew heavy. There, beneath the sky's vast silence, he found the only truth that mattered. Love doesn't end, it transforms. The sand became his paper, the waves his witnesses. And every time he wrote her name, it felt like breathing again. It was as if the ocean had become their messenger, carrying her memory through the tides, preserving what the world could not see. The sea was no longer just water and salt, it was the soul of his unspoken love. Sometimes, he imagined her standing beside him again, barefoot, laughing, teasing him about his serious face. "You're a prince," she would say, "but your heart belongs to poetry." He would smile and answer, "No, my poetry belongs to you." The world had taken her presence from him, but not her essence. That still lingered, in his words, in his dreams.